It may take a few years to understand some of what I will discuss in this video. I will discuss synthetic humans or artificial persons. Now, this is still a new discovery. It has been a decade since I discovered the androids on Capitol Hill. Since then, I have found quite a few more. I have identified over a dozen examples, suspects, people to consider that I think are easy to talk about. But my own research has gone much deeper, and I have identified a greater number than that, probably into the hundreds. Now, as you can imagine, this is a difficult discussion, but we are moving forward with this discussion, and if you are able, if you are strong enough, if you have the capacity and the will, I do encourage you to join me. For those who are not ready, and there could be a few who think they're ready, but they're not ready, please watch another video. I think in general that my work is going to move forward. There's enough material, whether it's a discussion or a written work, that we can build on that. And I want to build on that, and I don't want to keep talking about the same things over and over again. So join me if you're ready. If you're not ready, then find something more suitable. When I was at university, people didn't know what to study, and so they took all kinds of classes. So I took this economics class because that was part of my curriculum for a degree in business. I took economics. I didn't like economics. I didn't really understand economics, but it was a prerequisite in order to get to the other classes. In marketing and finance, you needed economics. So I went to class, and I didn't like the class, but I couldn't leave because I needed the credits. So I learned, and I stayed, and I did what the teacher asked me to do. Now, some people who took economics as an elective, who wanted to try economics, and they didn't like economics, they came to a class, they came to two classes, and they didn't understand it, they didn't like it, they didn't like the teacher, because sometimes you don't like a certain economics teacher. They left. They left the class, and they went to a different class. They didn't stay in the class and call the teacher names and complain and gossip about the teacher. They didn't stay in the class and said economics is no good, economics is dumb, because they didn't understand it. They left, and they found something more suitable. Now, we don't have this kind of system in the alternative field, because we get a lot of all kinds of intelligences, all kinds of people. So you have people who don't like something, and they watch it, and then they have to tell everybody how much they didn't like it. But there's no one holding you, forcing you to watch this stuff. So I think you should keep it in mind that there are going to be people who don't like the stuff, they don't understand it, they're too stupid, who just want to cause trouble, and they're in the wrong class. And when we meet these people, we have to understand that they're in the wrong class. They're watching the wrong thing. They're not ready yet. And they don't have the intelligence. And some people just don't have the intelligence to follow along. And they start to complain. When you start to complain and call the teacher names, you're in the wrong class. I hope you understand. Now, for those of you who are still here, the few of you, we've always been a small group, and that's fine, but we're a loyal group. Because you know I give you the best information I have. You know I am breaking new ground. I am groundbreaking. I am providing things that it will take years to understand. And synthetic humans is something that's going to become increasingly prevalent. And we have discussed a lot about it, about the androids, about the artificial people. So let's continue that discussion, okay? Because it is a serious discussion. It is a scientific fact based on my research, based on my sources now who have confirmed some of this information. And now I'm starting to see in the alternative community that there are one or two people who are coming up to support some of that knowledge. And more importantly, the science to back up synthetic humans is there. It's called synthetic biology. Now, I didn't know about synthetic biology until 2010. May 2010, when Craig Venter, V-E-N-T-E-R, J. Craig Venter, he introduced the world to the first synthetic cell. They took the genome of a bacteria and they took out the DNA, the core DNA. So they took the cell and they took out the DNA. And they went to their lab and they took 4 bottles of chemicals, 4 chemicals, and they took four bottles of chemicals, they created an artificial DNA code in the computer. So they created the DNA in a computer, and then they converted that into the biological code, and they used 4 chemicals to print out the DNA, and then they put that synthetic DNA, which they created, into the cell of this bacteria. And what happened was that the artificial DNA was able to boot up the cell, right? And then the cell takes on the DNA characteristics of the artificial DNA. The cell, right? It replicates. It takes on all of the data of the artificial DNA. Because that DNA came from a computer. They programmed it in a computer. It did not come from nature. Now, Venter himself admitted that it wasn't a true synthetic cell, because the cell itself was from some bacteria, but the DNA was artificial. But it proved, this is 2010, but it proved the point that the artificial DNA could boot up a biological cell. In other words, it can create life. It can sustain life. Now, the DNA of a bacteria is quite simple. So it's not like a human DNA, but the science is there. This is 2010, and the science has gotten better. And this is something I call digital DNA, because you create digital DNA and then you convert it into biological DNA. But the source of the DNA is from a computer. It was designed by a designer, a geneticist, a synthetic biologist. Now, the difference between biology and the computer is the code. The coding is different. The coding is 1 and 0, right? Ones and zeros. So it's a 2-digit ones and zeros, ones and zeros. And the biological code is four letters, right? A, G, C, T. The four letters, right? Guanine and I forget, adenosine, adenine. There's the 4 DNA, right? And deoxyribonucleic acid has 4 letters. So what they have to do is they have to take the 2-digit DNA code and convert it into a 4-digit. And there's a process to do that. They have a process to do that. They're doing this with data as well. They're taking digital data and they're converting it into biological data, and they can store it on DNA. It's a coding, right? So you're using some kind of biological converter. So in theory, the theory is you could take a species, a basic species on another planet, right? You could take a basic species on another planet and you convert it into digital DNA, and you can fax or email the DNA to another planet, to Earth, and then you take the digital DNA and through a biological converter, you create the species back here. It's a kind of like a biological teleporter. I think that's what they were calling it. But the science already works, right? It's, we just don't have the machines, the equipment that can do all this stuff. So the science for synthetic cells and synthetic DNA is here now, and it's been around for nearly a decade in public. But the discovery of the synthetic humans is unique because the synthetic humans, from my Capitol Hill examples, the 2 men and the woman, they were born in 1939, 1940, 1941, right? At the start of World War II. Now, this is kind of interesting. It's counterintuitive. It's counter logic, right? How can they have mastered synthetic biology in 1939 when we only discovered it, when it only became public in 2010? How is that possible? And it's possible because we like to think that the future is more advanced than the past. I will argue that the past is the future. The past is the future. That in the future, we are just chasing rainbows. Because they already had the advanced technology in the past, 1939. And this is just one piece of technology. We're just talking about one piece of the technological puzzle that they had access to in 1939. So, and this is where we get into the timeline split. They split the timeline such that this group lived on an advanced timeline, a futuristic timeline, and most of the population lived on this primitive repressed timeline that goes nowhere. It goes to a dead end. It doesn't go anywhere. Because the advanced stuff was there 75 years ago. Right? 1939 to 2000 is 60, and today is, this year is 2018 to 78. 80 years ago, 80 years ago, they had advanced technology enough to replicate human beings. So the discovery of the android is the discovery that they had advanced technology in 1939. And that it wasn't just technology, it was mature technology. It was able to create a human being that looks like it's real. Right? And they put us on the false timeline and made us think that a robot, a cyborg, would have mechanical parts, would have an endoskeleton, would be like from the movie Terminator. Now, while all of that was futuristic, it was also a false narrative. I think that the Terminator franchise is a false narrative. The cyborg. Because the cyborg is inferior to what they already had in 1939. So if the movie came out in the mid-1980s, let's say 1984, that's 45 years, right? 45 years we have traveled to create the image of a cyborg. And 45 years before, they have artificial human. Now, the reason I keep laboring over this point, because it's very important to understand, the past is the future. We are going nowhere on this timeline. We are going nowhere. It's a timeline that in 1,000 years, we might be able to stop using gasoline. Like, there's no progress on this timeline. That's the way it is. It's designed. You know how some people are on the highway, and then some people are on the road, and some people are driving on the dirt road. And if you go on the dirt road, it takes a lot longer to get somewhere than the guys on the highway. So we will never get anywhere because we were just going to run out of gas. We're going to just kill ourselves on this path because it's very chaotic, it's very difficult, and we were purposely sent in the wrong direction. Okay, we have to understand that. Now let's move forward one more step. Synthetic humans. Why create a synthetic human? Well, if you can create a person who will grow up to be a politician, right? And who will become a leader, and who will be able to change laws, who will be able to lead society, who will be able to lead movements, who will be able to influence the other visionaries, scientists, who will be able to influence the young people, give them ideas. If you could create a person to be that leader, then you control what they do. You control the movement, you control the laws, you control the country, you control the people. Now, why is that important? Because if I am an inventor and I am not good at leadership and I can't do 100 different things and nobody would ever elect me as a politician, then what I do is I create a human being to go in my stead, right? An android, a robot, but we can't make it cyborg because that's not going to pass. we need to make it look and act human. Indistinguishable from a biological human is a synthetic human. But a synthetic human is an engineered being, engineered in the computer and biologically created. And because of the way biology works, it will take the artificial DNA and it will replicate the artificial DNA, not being able to distinguish between artificial and the biological. Because the biology of the machine biology is replicates, right? It takes whatever data and it replicates. And so you give it artificial DNA and you construct it in such a way as you put the coding sequences in the right place, it replicates, and it replicates a human being. Only that this human being is under the dominion, is owned by some agency that has been working in secret, in a secret installation underground, where they are unnoticed, undetectable, and they have access to all kinds of technology. But one person is not enough, right? Why stop there, right? Look, I'm here. Let's say I'm the inventor. I'm here. I'm one of the inventor. Well, I'm going to create a couple of politicians. I'm going to create a couple of scientists. I need a couple of military people. I need some businessmen. And I need some celebrities. Come on. I need some celebrities. Right? I need all this stuff. I need all these people. So I start creating, engineering these people. You're gonna grow up to be a politician. You're gonna be a famous celebrity. And what these fake humans will do, right? They will do my bidding. Because I can communicate, right? Science has proven that DNA is a sender and receiver of information. So if I have the right wavelength, if I have the right technology, I can transmit data to my DNA robot. And the robot will pick it up and it will seem like an inspiration. They may not even know they're a robot. They don't have to know they're a robot. They feel like, I want to be a celebrity. Where did that come from? Maybe it came from me. Maybe I sent it to them from the computer because I created them. I have their frequency, right? I created them. There's a backdoor. There's a frequency. They're in my computer, right? Just think like a mobile phone. A mobile phone has a signature, has a code, has a sequence. And the telecom supplier has access to that mobile phone. When you make a phone call, it gets registered at the telecom, right? And periodically, the networks, they'll send some data to the phone to make sure the phone is still active, right? And they can know where you are. They can get data from the phone. They know who you called, how long you called. If they could record the voice, they can record the voice call. If there's text, if there's messages, if there are attachments, they can get all this stuff. It all has to do with frequency. It's just a technological thing. So I am saying that the people who can build these androids, they have the technology to communicate with them, right? And it's at a frequency that is a little bit above our mobile networks. But it is just a technology. And it's using the DNA as a transmitter receiver. And you have 1 trillion cells in your body, so there's a lot of information going on. As well, DNA stores information. So I can transmit data to my robot, and I can store it on their DNA. And at some later point, I can activate it. And then, hey, I should do this and I should do that. Oh, there's going to be a problem. I better change the laws. we better do a financial rescue, right? Now I'm controlling. I can create any kind of person. Why limit yourself to politicians and celebrities and businessmen, leaders? Why not create adversaries, a terrorist? I'll create a terrorist. They'll go into the military training, intelligence training, and then we'll pop them out as a terrorist, and they will attract other terrorists. But who controls the terror? Who invented the terrorist? The engineer. Because we use artificial DNA. We can communicate with the terrorists. So we can communicate with the terrorists, and we can communicate with our intelligence operative, who's also artificial, and the politician, who's artificial, and we can get them to coordinate some kind of scheme, some kind of operation. And we can do this on a small scale and a big scale. We can create a lunatic. We can create a guy and just program him to live a life. And then when we need them, we activate them and we tell them, go buy a gun, go to a church and start killing people. The police come, they shoot the guy. It's a domestic terror event. Everybody's in shock, but they killed an artificial man. They killed a robot. But what they did was they terrorized the people. They changed the laws. Too many guns. Too many guns. There's violence. We're not safe. Because how do you control people? You terrorize them. Terrorist event, domestic attacks, war. How do you change laws? You got a politician there. There's a politician there going, see, the guns is our problem. I am your trusted politician. I have been doing this for 25 years. You can trust me because I look human. Because you don't know that I am an artificial person. So, if we assume, if we infer that there are thousands of these artificial people in the world, some of them are living domestic lives, some of them are celebrities, some of them are porn stars, some of them are business people. And all of these are under the dominion, the ownership. If you create something, you own it. They're owned by this corporation, this agency that has been creating these artificial people. By the same token, you could take a real person, a celebrity or a politician, and you can take their DNA and you can create a clone. You can create a clone. And the clone is pretty close to the real person. So let's say, again, we're building on everything we've talked about. Let's say that this famous person or rich person wants to go off planet, wants to go to Mars. Well, they can't go to Mars because people are going to find out. So we create a clone, and the clone goes about their daily activities, and our special person goes to Mars. And we are none the wiser. Right? The clone, then when the clone's job is finished, the clone may end. They could be a temporary clone. They don't live very long. We destroy the clone, and the person comes back. Clones are great because if you send a high-level politician into a dangerous area, you could send their clone. If a celebrity dies accidentally, you swap them with a clone. Looks close enough. It's an artificial person, right? So if you take all of this information in, you get a very different makeup of the world. That I'm not saying everyone is artificial. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you took a snapshot of people, you would find that up to 30% are probably artificial to some degree, or to 100% artificial. Now, they may or may not know they are artificial, right? They may have a suspicion, and we don't know how much artificial. I mean, they could have just a little bit of artificial DNA, or they could have a lot of artificial DNA, right? I would say 30% of the population is in the artificial range. Now, if you are this agency, this cabal that's been around since 1939 or before, right? The technology was mature in 1939. So we can assume, we can infer that they had that technology for a period of time before that. My guess is in the late 1800s. My current guess is that the late 1800s is when they really started, this really started to become a serious investment. And before that, it might have been used on a more selective scale. So they have this technology and they're replicating people, replicants, you know, Blade Runner, right? You have to look up close to the DNA. You're gonna find a UPC code. One day we're gonna be able to look up the DNA and say, you know, made by the cabal. It's there if you know where to look and what to look for. We cannot distinguish the difference between artificial DNA and biological DNA. We're not, I mean, conventional science is not advanced enough. So when we become advanced enough, we will be able to distinguish artificial DNA from biological DNA. And then we will be able to know who is artificial and who is biological, and to what degree of each, right? Because it's going to be mixed. You're going to get hybrids. Hybrids will have biological DNA and artificial DNA. An interstellar DNA hybrid. It's a completely engineered life form. I have met at least 2 or 3 hybrids. They are very different. They are very different, but they are indistinguishable from other human beings. Now, even you tell somebody, let's say we find somebody who is artificial, and you tell them they are artificial, they will not believe it, because the program will not let you believe it, will not let you access that, because that could create conflict with the master controller, right? We can't control our robot. They put in blocks. They hobble. What I said before, they can hobble a person. They can put in codes into the DNA. They can repress certain genes so that they don't trigger. So even you try to wake up, you can't, because the gene is blocked. Now, when you block a gene, we're talking about chemical, right? We're talking about chemical, we're talking about programming, we're talking about invisible. You can't see DNA, right? So you can't say this is blocked, right? And there's thousands and thousands of genes. So when you create an artificial person, you encode it. And you say, well, if they're going to wake up, we don't want them to wake up too early. We're going to repress some of their abilities here. We're going to prevent access to their memory systems. You do all this. You hobble the person so that they will abide by your command. They will serve you better. Now, there was an actress recently, I'd say in a recent year, who publicly said, I won't say their name, but who publicly said on multiple occasions, "I am a robot." Public, on television. And there was a context for that discussion. Again, I won't say who it is, but there was a context for that discussion. And this person said, "I am a robot," on multiple occasions. And the people looked at her. They didn't know what to do with it. They couldn't process it. You can't process that information. What do we do with it? The robots don't exist and they don't look human. We've been programmed, again, on this primitive timeline. We've been repressed, suppressed. We can't think at that level. So even this person was saying, "I am a robot." Nobody would ask any more questions because it doesn't make any sense, right? But this person was starting to understand that perhaps they are one of these engineered beings. Now, so let me add this. There's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with being an engineered person, because it's DNA. In fact, if you're engineered, someone has taken the care and consideration to design you. So that means, that's they love you. The designer loves you, right? And if you really study DNA, somebody long ago designed it. Someone created DNA. It's a program. So only now is more recent, but it's a technology, right? It's like Lego, right? Somebody put the blocks together and there's a human being. It's not a divine thing. It's a scientific thing. So if you have been engineered, if you are engineered, if you are artificial, it doesn't make you any less. In fact, it should make you special because you've been designed, and you've been designed for usually a reason, or you've been designed to serve certain purposes. And you can tap into that. You can live a fine life. There's nothing wrong with living an artificial life. Because the DNA is such an advanced technology. It's great, it's perfect. There's no restriction. You're not a lesser person. In fact, if the designer is any good, you can create an advanced person. So, one of the people, I think the woman, of the three individuals I discovered on Capitol Hill, the original ones, the three original ones, the woman, right? The woman, the female android, I think is very advanced. Very advanced. In other words, the designer is very smart. And the designer put some things in there that makes this woman very capable. More capable, more advanced than other models. And it also may give the designer more direct access to this person, right? To the consciousness. Sometimes the designer could insert themselves into the consciousness of the person temporarily and do certain things and influence people. So synthetic humans are very real. I think it is an advanced technology. It comes from other star systems, and it is a prevalent technology. It is a widely used technology. It is an accepted technology. Artificial DNA, synthetic DNA, is a widely understood technology. Synthetic biology off planet, not on this planet, because this planet is repressed. This is a suppressed, repressed planet. But when we wake up and realize this, we're going to see that the beauty of artificial DNA, because you can design life, and life is life. DNA is DNA, and you can create a more perfect being. You can eliminate bad characteristics. But this has been used for thousands of years. It is found in other star systems, right? It's being used already for thousands of years. Where did the human race come from? Right? Where did the human race come from? So we are the result of this science. And now I have identified that there's somebody else practicing this science in secret. And I have found evidence of that, and we need to explore that. Because if you want to know the mind of the designer, you listen to their puppets, right? So what the puppet says is what the cabal, what the master controller, the puppeteers, what they want you to think. So if you identify the puppets, you can counter their argument, right? And then we can take back our timeline and we can improve our civilization. That's the purpose. The purpose is you identify the science and you identify the puppets. Then you listen to their argument, you listen to their narratives, right? You listen to their talking points, and then you counter those talking points. You shoot down their narratives, right? You don't have to do anything else. You just have to create a counter argument, because you know that they were created to misdirect us and to steer us in the wrong direction. And to free us, we need to start acknowledging these advanced scientists and their advanced puppets, right? And then we can join together and follow a true narrative, and stop listening to these false, fake people.